that the testimony you're about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the mock trial rules of competition?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Now, would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Dana Haskins.
You mentioned you were a doctor. What field are you in?
Yes, I am a board-certified licensed psychiatrist.
Now, doctor, are you here today to testify to a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes, I am here to testify based on medical certainty, not with my personal opinions.
Okay, now before getting to your testimony, I'd like to ask you about your qualifications.
Okay, not to brag, but I earned my bachelor's degree in psychology from Xavier University in 1980 with a summa cum laude, of course. And then I received a medical degree from the University of Texas in 1984.
Now, are you a member in any professional organizations or societies?
Yes, just to name a few, I'm a part of the American Psychological Association, the Midland Medical Association, and also the American Association of Advancement of Science. Whew.
And doctor, have you published any articles in your field?
Yes, I have co-authored and authored over 35 or 34 peer-reviewed papers.
Now, as a psychiatrist, do you have any specialties?
Yes, I specialize in forensic psychiatry.
Your Honor, at this time, the plaintiff will wish to tender Dr. Dana Haskins as an expert in forensic psychiatry due to her extensive knowledge in the field.
Any objections?
The defense objects, Your Honor. In order for a witness to be considered an expert, their testimony has to be both relevant and reliable. While Dr. Haskins' testimony may be relevant to this case, it is not necessarily reliable considering her 2 sanctions by the Board of Psychiatry before this shooting.
Any response?
The plaintiff responded to that. I responded to that. Dr. Dana Haskins is an expert in the state, is here today to testify on the state and mind of Jeffries, and she did conclusively diagnose him with medical certainty.
You mean common?
Yeah, common.
Anything further from your side?
When diagnosing him with improper procedures, him or her with improper procedures, it doesn't necessarily mean that she's helping him or diagnosing anything.
Okay. I find the objection to be a legitimate one. However, I think in fairness to the witness, we'll let the direct examination and perhaps the cause prove her credibility or not.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, now, Dr. Dana Haskins, why are you here today?
I am here to testify. I was asked to testify on behalf of Officer Conway's mental state of mind and well-being leading up to the shooting of Max Jeffries.
Who is Jamie Conway? Officer Conway.
Officer Conway was a police officer in the PCPD. He is also known for the one to shoot Max Jeffries.
How do you know Jamie Conway?
I was his psychiatrist.
When did you become a psychiatrist?
I became his psychiatrist due to the incident on May 2012 where Officer Conway was involved in a work-related shooting.
Now, when you first met Conway, did you notice anything that stood out to you?
Yes, it was very surprising because he had symptoms of aggression and anger management issues.
Now, how did you come to this conclusion?
I came to this conclusion when my team and I first met him on June 2012. As standard practice follows, I reviewed his medical records. I assigned a psychologist to administer the psychological test, and I conducted a 60-minute personal interview.
Okay, now, focusing on the tests, what were some of the tests that Conway was administered on?
He was administered on the Shipley test, the MPI test, the WAISIB test, and the CPI test.
Now, what were your results of these tests?
The results on the CPI test, it showed that Officer Conway was detached and preoccupied, all of which are qualities and characteristics that should not be shown in the police workforce.
So what was your conclusion after the test?
The conclusion was Officer Conway may have been suffering from PTSD.
What is PTSD?
PTSD, also known as post-traumatic stress disorder, is when the patient is subjected to flashbacks, episodes of anxiety, and episodes of depression.
Now, when may PTSD occur?
PTSD occurs when the patient is in a trauma and when the patient is put back in a situation that was once.
Okay. Now, your testimony was that you conducted an interview. What was one thing that stood out to you during the interview?
One thing that stood out to me during the interview was how open Officer Jamie Conway was about his feelings and how he feared that his aggression may cause him to act inappropriately during his work.
Okay, now what was your conclusion after this interview?
My conclusion was that Officer Jamie Conway was, in fact, suffering from PTSD, but there was no way to conclusively diagnose him with that problem.
So was there any way to diagnose him?
Yes, there was this CAPS-5 test, which is also known as the golden test of post-traumatic stress disorder.
So were you able to test him?
No, due to the PCPD unable to cover the insurance and the fees, so instead, Officer Conway was assigned to a bi-weekly session where he had to talk about his issues in a group setting.
So when did he start?
Well, it started around June 2012.
Was there any improvement during these 4 months?
No, Officer Conway sadly reported to me that he was losing sleep, he was feeling anxious and was fearful, and I had to take action.
So were you able to diagnose him during these sessions?
Still, I was unable to diagnose Officer Conway.
Okay, now, when did the sessions end?
It ended around October 18th, 2012.
Was that the final time you saw him?
No, I saw him once more on February 13th, 2013. It was a month after the shooting of Max Jeffries.
Now, what did you do during this session?
I was finally able to perform the long-awaited CAPS-5 test.
Now, what were the results of this test?
The results were not astonishing. I, as a matter of fact, knew that he might have been suffering from PTSD. It showed red markings of being detached and preoccupied.
Okay, now, after this, what were your conclusions?
Well, I came up with 2 conclusions that evening with Officer Jamie Conway.
What was your first conclusion?
My first conclusion was that this was foreseeable and that Officer Jamie Conway was in fact suffering from PTSD, and this was foreseeable because I was able to tell the PCPD that Officer Jamie Conway was experiencing signs of PTSD.
Now, what was your final conclusion?
My final conclusion was that Officer Jamie Conway was acting under the flashback of being in that trauma during May 2012, that he was in fact acting as if he was back in that original situation. And with neglect from the PCPD, we would not have been in this regrettable issue where a kid was shot.
That would be all, Your Honor. No further questions.
Thank you. Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.